Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die, where my goal is to give you evidence that although our bodies will disappear, we survive physical death. When we aren't afraid of death, we are less afraid of life. From all these episodes, I aim for all of us to take more risks in our lives, go after our dreams, have great relationships, and definitely some fun in the process. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain. And before I get started with this episode, I want to share some news with you. I think many of you listeners who have been listening for a while knew that I flew to Denver, Colorado to be a guest and be filmed actually on a television show with George Norrie. George Norrie is the host of a radio show called Coast to Coast AM that is broadcast in the wee hours of the night to millions of listeners. So he's got a huge following. So for me to be asked to be filmed for his TV episode is a really big deal. And so the good news is just a couple of days ago, it aired live, and it's on a television station, an internet television station. And if you want to see it, you can go to beyondbelief.com. So it's called beyondbelief.com, and I'm actually episode 16 of season 4. And depending on when you're listening to this, it'll either be the most recent episode, or you might hear this a year from now, and so you have to scroll through. So anyways, it's a great episode. It'll get you very inspired, both about my message or our message of We Don't Die, but also some really great tools about who you are and what your life is for. So today on our show, I'm pleased to introduce you to a wonderful woman who says she needed to die to get a life. Her name is Dianne Sherman, and I'm anxious to share her story with you and why she believes in life after death. And like most of the guests we've heard on We Don't Die Radio, Dianne gives her life to make a difference with others and describes herself as a life guide. So let's meet her. Hello, Dianne Sherman. Welcome to We Don't Die.
Hi, Sandra. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really delighted. And for our listener, if you go to WeDon'tDieRadio.com right now and you look at episode 51, you can take a look at Dianne and kind of see who it is we're talking to right now. So Dianne, I'm great. You're coming to us from California, you said.
Yes, I'm high up in the redwoods at the Pacific Ocean in a little place called Eureka.
Oh, I've driven through Eureka, actually.
How random is that?
I know. It was a long time ago, probably about 10 years ago. And I'm in Massachusetts where we had an incredible snowfall. It's February of 2015 right now, and there was almost 7 feet of snow that dumped on us in the last month.
I know, I've been reading about, I don't know how you people are all surviving this.
I know. Well, I got to go on a vacation the past couple of weeks, so I've been quiet for a little while. I got to go on a vacation to the island of St. Thomas. So in the middle of the blizzard, I was sitting there in the turquoise water and going deep sea fishing and just relaxing. So pretty
Well,
cool.
that's one way to get through winter, isn't it?
I know. But enough about me, because this is about you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and maybe what your experience was that made you believe that we don't die?
Well, let's see. In 1981, I went into the hospital to have a simple surgery. I was having arthroscopy on my left leg, on my knee.
Okay.
And, it was not something I was worried about or concerned about. I had waited a long time to do it, and I just knew everything was going to be wonderful and easy. And somehow when I got in there, there was a different energy about what was going on. And I went through the surgery, and the surgery took a lot longer. I guess there was more damage than they realized. And then I came out and went into recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow in recovery, there was a lot going on at that time. And I don't know how in depth you want me to go with this story, but
Whatever you feel moved to share, because it's just us, so you
okay,
feel free. You know your story better than I do.
that's true. So as I'm laying there and I'm trying to sort of get my bearings in recovery, there's a lot of commotion in the bed next to me, and it kind of took me aback that there was so much going on. It's like, you're in this quiet, calm place, and then all of a sudden there's just all this energy and trauma and drama going on. And I didn't want to be a part of it. I didn't want to watch it. I didn't want to listen to it.
Right.
But I was also fascinated by it. That human side of me came up. And I'm turning my head to the left and I'm looking, and they're just feverishly working on this person. And I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but I know this person's in trouble. And all of a sudden I hear them calling her name. So it turns out to be a woman, and they're saying, Dianne, Dianne, wake up, Dianne, come back, come back. And I'm thinking, isn't that funny? We both have the same name. And I'm still, trying to take my attention away from it and not pay attention to it. And all of a sudden they're calling her full name. Dianne Sherman, wake up.
Oh my
Dianne
gosh.
Sherman, wake up. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they've got the wrong person. They've got the wrong name. That's my name. How can they be calling her by my name? Something's wrong here. And so I'm trying to get their attention and trying to tell them, hey, I'm Dianne Sherman and I'm here. I'm right here and I'm okay. You've got the wrong person that you're working on. And I thought, oh, I wonder if they've done the wrong surgery on her, and this and that and the other. Anyway, the next thing I know, I'm standing at the bottom of her bed. And I'm looking at her and I'm looking at them working on her. And there's no connection. Sandra, there's no connection to her at all.
You didn't.
I see it's me, but there's no connection.
Wow.
And in that moment, I'm surprised my mind didn't go crazy and want to understand. And I didn't. It was kind of as if somebody said, pass the salt. It had no more energy on it than that.
Wow.
Even though I could see they were trying to bring me back to life, I had no interest. I had no worry. I had no, oh my God, that's me. I had none of that. And so it was fascinating and so odd at the same time.
Yeah, but you did recognize that it was you.
I did, fully, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And, I'm listening to what they're saying and what they're doing, and it's kind of like, why am I standing here? That was the only kind of thought, was why am I standing here? Not in the big scheme of things of what's going on with her, but just for where I was all of a sudden. Why am I standing here? And there was no realization that I was dead. There was no realization that I was out of my body. And I had no awareness of near-death experience at that time, 1981. I hadn't read Raymond Moody's book. We didn't have the internet and all of that. There wasn't conversation about it.
Right.
So I was just kind of like an innocent walking blindly through this experience. And the next thing I knew, I'm up in the corner of the ceiling overlooking all of it. And I'm not even, kind of fascinated with the fact that I'm up in the ceiling overlooking all of this. It's like the whole thing had such a sense of knowingness and alrightness and ease, and of course this is natural, that's where I should be, of course, kind of attitude. Next thing I knew, I'm being extricated out of the room, and I'm feeling this pull from behind, just pulling me out of the room. And the next thing I feel is I'm kind of like going forward, and I'm being pushed from behind. And every time I say this or tell this part of it, I can feel my body arching, kind of pushing back from it.
Right.
And there's this blackness. And when I was a kid, my most terrifying feeling was being in the dark. There was a fear of being blind and in the dark and hopeless and helpless. And so that's where I found myself, in the dark, going forward into this darkness, and it was scaring me. And I thought, just like when I was a kid, well, if I can find a glimmer of light, like if there was a glimmer of light coming from the street in the window of my room, I would be okay. And so I'm looking for this glimmer. I'm just struggling to find a glimmer of light. And I see this little spot, a little tiny spot of light way out in the distance. And I'm just holding on to it for dear life, because I know that I'm safe in all of my psychological stuff that's going on, that I'm safe if I can hold on to that little glimmer of light. And as I'm watching it, it starts to grow, Sandra, it starts to grow. And as it's growing, it's getting closer to me. And as it's getting closer to me, it's getting wider. And then all of a sudden, it's everywhere around me. I am encapsulated in this glimmer of light that has become this profusion, this brilliance, this, oh, I don't even have the words for it. Just this glorious white light that is surrounding me. It's like standing in clouds. It's all I can think of is standing in just brilliant clouds, because it had sort of that wafting feeling to it, like clouds do. And now I'm moving through it. I'm moving deeper into it. And I'm coming to an area where all of a sudden it starts to get finer and thinner and more diaphanous, and it starts to part. And ahead of me are 2 rows of beings that are standing in monks' robes facing each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like floating between them. And once again, I'm not concerned. I'm not afraid. I'm just comfortable. And as I'm getting in the center of them, I can just feel this unconditional love, and it starts in the light, but as I'm flowing through, this unconditional love is just surrounding me. It's in every part of my being. It's like every thread of me is now awake and aware and connected and alive on a level I never knew. Even though I'm dead, I am so alive. I'm so happy. I am so home for the first time in my life. I'm so at home with myself. I've come home to my own heart, to my own knowingness. And as I get to the end of the row of these 2 beings in these brown monks' robes, and they've got their hoods up, the one on the left steps forward and he speaks to me. And when he speaks to me, there's no sound. It's like he's talking inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at him and there's no face. There's blackness. It's like energy moving. It's just, and there was no fear in seeing that. It was like normal and natural, like that's how it had always been. And he says to me, "It's not your time. You cannot stay. You must go back." And I'm like incredulous, and I say to him, "I just got home. I just came home. I just found everything I had wanted in my whole life. That sense of being loved unconditionally, that sense of being cherished, that sense of being in the right place, that sense of all the knowingness, that sense that I had never had as an adult, as a wife, as a mother.
Mm-hmm.
I had never had these experiences. I had always wanted them, but I'd never had them." And he repeated, "You cannot stay. It's not your time. You must go back. You have a child." And he repeated that to me several times, and I'm like begging and pleading with him, saying the same thing about, "You can't send me back. I just found home." And he said, "You have a child." And I started thinking about my daughter. My daughter was 6 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was divorced. And I'm thinking, who could love this child and take care of her the way I want her to be loved and cared for?
Right.
And I had my ex-husband, but he was my ex-husband for a reason. And I had my sister, but she was not healthy psychologically to be a role model, to be a loving, safe parent for my daughter. My parents had passed away, so there just wasn't anybody that fit the bill for me, that was right for me. Even though I didn't want to come back into my body, I wanted to stay there. But I couldn't resolve this inside of me about my daughter. And in thinking about her and what I wanted for her, I was back in my body.
Wow.
And I think in my heart, I chose to come back because I love her. I think I chose to come back because I really thought that was the best thing for her.
Hmm.
I know I was going to be sent back, but I want to think that I was a part of that.
Right.
Right. Although I was fighting tooth and nail to stay, and if I hadn't had my daughter, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you.
Right.
I'd still be there, hopefully.
Do you know what happened that caused the near-death experience? I mean, what
Yes,
happened with the knee surgery?
yes. I have low blood pressure,
Uh-huh.
and my blood pressure went to zero, and I flatlined.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah.
And another question that I have
Sure.
is, um, I've heard from other folks that have had the near-death experiences, even though yours happened in 1981. Do you remember it as vivid as when it happened?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's a visceral reaction when I tell the story.
That is so amazing to me because I can't even remember with clarity how yesterday went.
Oh, neither can I.
And time again, that is something that's so common, is like it's just a feeling like it just happened. I mean, it's so real, and I think that's miraculous. And I completely get it. I can't even imagine the feeling of that unconditional love and feeling cherished and really having that knowingness of everything and that feeling of being at home. I mean, it sounds like who wouldn't want to be there, you know?
Right.
Wow.
Exactly. And, I'm probably the worst person in the world when it comes to people passing away because I'm always so thrilled for them because I know where they're going and I know what they're going to experience.
Gosh, and
Gosh.
what a gift that would be. And that's something that I say in theory that it would be great if we all believed. I mean, really, not just had faith, but we knew to our core that we don't die and that when we close our eyes here on earth, you're going to open them somewhere else. But to have that kind of faith, you would celebrate when someone passes away, even though there still is that physical grief that we go through because, it's when we can't smell them and touch them and hug them and things like that, it's still difficult. But to be able to rejoice that, they're still alive. So anyways, continue with your story. What happened next? So you came to, and was it immediate that you ended up sharing this with other people that you had this experience or?
Oh, heavens, no, no.
Okay.
It took a long time for me to put the pieces together. There was a part of me that thought I, was dreaming this or,
Mm-hmm.
had uh, something with the anesthesia or whatever. The thing that cued me was the psychic abilities that started showing up. I had always been sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
but this was on a whole different level. I was hearing other people's pain and stories inside of them as I would be in a room, go into a restaurant and I would hear people. I could feel people.
Can you give us an example of what do you mean by that?
Um, I'm sitting in a restaurant with a
Mm-hmm.
very dear friend, and my attention is taken to the table that's behind us. And I can hear the pain and suffering in every person sitting at that table.
Oh my.
I can hear and feel what they're grappling with in that moment.
In like a split second, you just had a knowing of what was
Yes,
okay.
it was almost as if, I had stepped into their bodies.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
Okay.
certainly not something I wanted.
Yeah, I can understand. I've heard stories. I mean, even just being somewhere that, you can say it's negative energy or somebody's got bad vibes. I mean, and I don't have what you have, but there's times that you just know that, oh, you don't want to be there. And to
Exactly.
really be feeling and picking up what everybody's feeling around you, that's intense.
It was intense. And there was a point in my life where I thought, am I becoming psychotic? What's happening to me? I didn't really understand.
Okay.
And I had spent, 12 years in Catholic school, was raised Catholic, had certain religious um, doctrines inside of me. And this was all just kind of like not making sense. And so I started asking for help in a big way I guess, on a spiritual level. Now, I had never thought of myself as spiritual per se,
Mm-hmm.
religious, and I had a great love of the saints and all of that. And now all of a sudden it's a whole different world because everything that I grew up with, all the tenets that I grew up with were being challenged. And, I grew up with heaven and hell. And all of a sudden I realized that we have translated that different than how it really is. That,
Interesting.
that we have the ability to create heaven here on earth. And certainly people are going through hell here on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And it really comes from our perceptions creating our reality. And, how we feel about ourselves inside, how we've gotten wired from childhood and through experiences really is what creates everything that is coming towards us. It's all a vibration. And if there's negativity that we're grappling with inside of ourselves, our insecurities and our fears, we are mirroring that out into the world, and there will be a match for that coming to say hello to us.
And that is good news and bad news because
Exactly.
I've experienced it. I think we all have. Let me go back to your story though. At what point, because I I have in front of me your credentials and what you're up to now. Our listener does not know. So at some point you made, light bulb went off that it's like, hey, this is the real deal and I have to do something with it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I realized, and let me digress for a second.
Okay.
I went to see this astrologer, and he had never seen me before, and he was reading my chart, and he said, "Oh my, you've got that thing in your chart where you just love to give the good news." And I thought, wow, the good news.
Hmm.
And I had done also one of those personality
Like the
tests.
Myers-Briggs or something like that?
It's like a Myers-Briggs, but
Uh-huh.
it's a different format, and so it picks up other things.
Okay.
And the thing that kept coming up was minister and counseling.
Huh.
And I thought, well, that's interesting, that would be where I'm maybe supposed to go. And when this guy said, you want to give the good news, I realized, yes, there's this truth inside of me that I know we're here to be in joy. We're here to play. We're here to connect and love each other. We're here to have this amazing experience. And we're here to create what it is that fulfills us in the best of ways here, and that we have the power to do that. But somehow life has taught us that we are not powerful, that we're not good enough, that we're not big enough or whatever it is to do this work. And so we don't even try. We're shut down. And I thought, the thing I want most is to be able to give somebody a hand up in the knowingness of this stuff, to be able to touch them in a way that opens up all of their connections and all of their sense of knowingness and allow them to thrive on that level. I was so tired of knee-jerking in my life, and I had been knee-jerking a lot before I had my near-death experience. As a matter of fact, I had gone to church a couple of weeks before I had my experience, and it was kind of like a scene out of the Nun story with Audrey Hepburn. I almost felt like I was prostrate at the altar, begging and pleading for help
Hmm.
in my life.
Right. I have the visual of you doing that.
Yeah. And, I got the cosmic 2x4, which just straightened everything out. I literally had to die in order to open up and understand what the hell I was here for,
Hmm.
and what this is all about. And I'm so grateful for it, even though, it has changed my life greatly, and that's an understatement. And it's been a struggle in many ways to understand what to do and who I was and what I was meant to do.
Right.
But I have loved the process. I have loved every stage of it. And I haven't always made people comfortable with it.
Uh-huh.
My daughter, I know I embarrassed her greatly many times when she was growing up if we were out and about doing something. And maybe we happened to be in an elevator, and all of a sudden there would be this information that would just be coming up through me, and I would turn to the person next to me, the person behind me, and I would give them the information. Of course, I didn't know them, and I would blindside them with this information, which I now understand what that was about. They needed that shock, that heart opening.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave it to them. So they'd either go into laughter or tears, and my daughter would just look at me like, Mom, did you have to do that? And the answer was, yes, I had to do that. I
Yeah.
could not do that.
All right. I watch the Long Island Medium every now and again, and I see her with her kids or her husband, and she just is in a restaurant, and she has to give a message, and they roll their eyes like, "Oh, come on!" But I mean, it's true. What you can share can make a difference with somebody in a moment, and how, you know, I don't know, kids are kids, and I hated when my parents embarrassed me because they did. But I grew up and I ended up okay. That's just part of the growing up process. Wow.
It's true. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I grappled with that thought of who am I to do
Right.
this? How do I know that that's right? How do I know that's okay? And what gives me the right to be able to tell people things like that?
Hmm.
And I realized that Spirit's working with me all the time. I can feel it. The vibration in my body changes. And I just now, I relax into and just let it rip because I know it's here for a reason. I'm with this person for a reason. If they've come to me for a reading or for help or whatever, I just say whatever comes and I say it in the most loving way I can.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, because I know you're a spiritual life coach, intuitive counselor, and vibrational healer. I haven't a clue what any of that means. So, what do you do?
What do I do? Well,
Yeah.
let's see. Um, the term spiritual life coach, it's kind of like I feel like I'm a life guide for people, but
Hmm.
I tried using the term life guide and people thought I was a lifeguard and I just got
Right.
tired of explaining it. So I let that go, but that's kind of what it is. It's I help guide people through their life, through their experiences, wherever they're stuck, wherever they're having a problem, wherever they think life is going against them. I explain to them what's really happening and I explain their response to it and why. And I take them to that place where they originally got wired in a certain way,
Hmm.
where they created belief systems about themselves, and I unwind that. I psychologically unwind that with them. And the vibrational healing and the intuitive counseling, of course, is how I can get to all of that. Because I can read their stories, I can read them, but I want them to have the aha. So I will give them questions and whatnot to bring it out. And sometimes we do inner child work, which gets back to where this stuff got created.
Hmm.
And just kind of give them a chance to see the bigger picture of themselves in their life, because there's always a theme running in us. And I try to help them get to what is that theme that keeps reoccurring, that keeps getting in the way, that keeps you from being who you really want to be
Yeah.
and having the experience you really want to have and keeps you suffering. And then the vibrational healing, I use codes and frequencies to clear and obliterate whatever is in there that's blocking or impeding them from thinking in a different way, from responding in a different way,
What is,
from what.
sorry, I'm interrupting you, but what
It's
does it
okay.
mean, codes and frequencies? Like, what would that look
Yeah.
like if I was in the office with you? Or I'm sure
Well,
you do this on telephone and Skype and things like that. You don't have to
I
be
do.
face to face with you. Okay.
I do. Well, a lot of it is I'm asking the creator directly for help with each person. I'm asking for certain codes, vibrational codes, to be downloaded that I can send these to this person that will open up the blocks that are in them. Everybody's carrying in cellular memory
Hmm.
in the cells of the body, trauma. That's where it's stored. And if you can neutralize, flatline, in other words, if you can have the same vibratory frequency as that, it will flatline and get dumped out of the cell and into the system and be flushed out. And it gives people great relief because they no longer have to be operating from that operating system.
That's great news. I have heard before that our memories are saved in a cellular level, and I can't remember the guy's name. Bruce Lipton, is he one of the ones that?
He's one of them, yeah.
Yeah, that had written about that. But I know for myself, like say, in my early days of learning about this stuff, anytime somebody would talk about the inner child, I'd kind of laugh like, oh, come on. But even as me and as an example, the first memory I have of something going wrong was getting lost at Disneyland and just being maybe 4 or 5 years old. And even to this day, as a 48-year-old woman, knowing that that happened to me, and I don't think about it ever, but if I'm in a, say, Home Depot or a grocery store at or some big park, and I can't see right away the person I came with, it's like I have a panic attack, and I actually have to talk myself out of it that, hey, this is just a 4-year-old. You're an adult now, and you know how to get out of the store and find your person. But it's so right there, just to my core. Like every cell feels that fear,
Right.
So I mean, and I think it's really brilliant that people can tell me that, oh, Sandra, you're afraid to be, not afraid to be alone, but you're afraid to be lost. But unless I see it for myself, it doesn't do any good. So I love that you say that you can bring people back there, because I think we all have people in our life that we can look at and say, oh, they're insecure, or, whatever that may be. But if that person doesn't recognize it himself, there's no chance of transforming into someone else, right?
Right. And there's a phenomenon that occurs that I don't think most people are aware of. And that is that these little kids are still living inside of us. The problem is they're not integrated fully, and they are our creative, playful side. And so when something goes awry, like you getting separated from a friend, all of a sudden that little kid is out. They're like little periscopes, always watching to see, am I safe? Is everything okay? And so this little kid comes out, and now all of a sudden you've lost your ability to have your adult tools.
Right.
Right. Because you're overwhelmed. You can't get to your words and your thoughts. You're just in pure overwhelm, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yep. That's because the little kid is out. You as the adult is no longer in charge. So one of the things that I do, and anybody can do this, is to work with the inner child to calm that child and let them know that they are not alone, that the adult is here taking care, watching out, making sure they're safe, and that they need to just relax and go play. Now, when I work with somebody, we do it a lot deeper than that, and we do it with writing, because that seems to be able to connect with them on a different level. I have them use both hands when they write. The question is with the dominant hand. The answer from the child is with the non-dominant hand. So switching hands, accessing different hemispheres of the brain, makes a big difference in really getting in touch with this little kid.
Can you give us, because I love leaving people, myself included, with just some great, awesome tools that we can use. A lot of us are struggling in life. I think that's part of life.
Most of us are struggling in life.
Yeah, we don't.
Called being a human being.
Yeah, and it's hard to often remember that there's a bigger picture. And I say life is an education for our soul. But if we're grappling with something right now, is there some way we can use this? Like, talk to us about what kind of homework you'd give us to get in touch with our inner child with the left and right hands.
Well, first of all, you need to create a quiet space. And for some people, lighting a candle, making this a more sacred experience is helpful because it brings their personality to the table. Because most people are living from the neck up. They're not living from the neck down. So we want to cue them that this is important work and come and make it sacred. So you've got something to write on big enough and something to write with that's comfortable, because you're going to be using two hands.
Okay.
And what you do is you introduce yourself to your little kid, whatever the name was that you went by as a little kid that you resonated to, you call them that. You write to them and you tell them that you are the adult version. You are them in the future. However you want to couch it, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter. You just want to share with them who you are because they don't have a clue who you are. Okay? And you ask them if it's okay to have a conversation. You always want to end in a question mark because that's what activates them. And then you switch hands with your writing instrument and let them speak through and do not judge what you hear. It's going back to pretend and make believe when we were children. You know, we stepped out of critical thinking when we were children. We didn't need to go there. And this kind of a spiritual practice is the same thing. You need to trust what you hear, and you may hear it inside of yourself. You may hear it outside of yourself. It may just be a feeling, and you just let it come out. You don't judge it. And then the next thing is to ask them, you know, what's going on in their lives? How are things? And ask them what you can do for them in that moment. Is there something they need? Oftentimes they want to be held, they want attention, they want somebody to play with them, they want some kind of help or acknowledgement. And you have this conversation and you can ask different things, you know, and get a sense of who these little kids are. And you want to remind them that you are here to love and protect them and that you are never going away because so many children have abandonment issues. And so many adults are still operating from that kind of a knee-jerk position.
Hmm.
And so if you let them know that you do love them, that you are here for them, that you are here to protect them, that you're never going away, and that you're always on guard for them, and that you will play with them, they become much more comfortable letting go of the control. So that when you know you're going to be in a position that may be a little hard for you in some way, stressful, because it's stress that always brings them out. Just say internally to yourself, you know, hand on your heart, hand on your solar plexus, it's okay, honey, I'm here, I've got this, I'm the adult, you go play. And it lets them off the hook. You know, because for many kids, and I was one of those kids, where there was a lot of trauma and abuse, you always had to be on guard because there wasn't somebody watching out for you because oftentimes the people who were supposed to watch out for you were the perpetrators.
Right.
So this is a way of really letting these children be children and eventually they will integrate. And, you know, you ask them at the end of your conversation, how often do you want me to check in with you? And for some of them, it's going to be every day for a few weeks. And for others, it'll be, you know, whatever they tell you. And if you honor that, you will create a bond. Now, the lovely part of this is that it's an opening to falling in love with yourself because you get to see and feel the preciousness of this child. And the realization is this precious child is you. This is the perfect child in whom God is well pleased. This is you. And when we own that, we own our own hearts and we come back to ourselves in such a loving way.
I think too, you're I don't want to give too much of my personal life on this show, but I deal a lot, when I was a little kid, I really wanted to be a veterinarian and I wanted to help animals and growing up, even though I didn't do that, I was always the kid and the person to reach out to the less fortunate or somebody that was sick, or I worked in nursing homes and I was just the giver, 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 giver. And not anything wrong with that, but I see even into my adulthood, sometimes I give so much and I'm not taking care of Sandra. And some friendships I've been in that it's really tough because it seems, Diane, that the more generous I am, the more people expect me to be generous. And then if I pull a little back to have some Sandra time, that hurts other people. So, I'm just looking for myself about talking to this inner child. And I think, I'm going to do the homework after we're done with this episode and really have that conversation. Because I think on one hand, it's good to give, but like we all hear, if you don't put yourself first, you really can't help somebody else. You know,
Well, it's more than that. That's your first and foremost job is giving to you.
mm,
Because if you're not shoring yourself up, if you're not making sure that you're in the best possible shape you can be for you, if you're not honoring and loving you, you're not in shape to do for people. You're not bringing the light into the world that you're here to bring.
right.
Right. Charity begins at home, and that means self-loving, self-nurturing, self-care, self-aware. Life is moving so fast, people don't think that it's important to take the time to check in and see, where am I with myself?
Yeah.
Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Because dehydration creates depression.
Oh, I didn't know that. Makes sense.
Am I tired? Do I need to be in nature? Do I need to call a friend? Do I need to do something that's silly and fun? Do I need to walk in the grass? What do I need? And really find out who's in there. We're not machines that were made to just do. We are called human beings, being meaning
Right.
to be all the time. You're talking about, and I think it's very brave that you're talking about giving yourself away.
Well, and I know I'm not the only one, so I
Oh,
that's
no,
another
'cause,
reason that I do that because I know somebody else is listening right now. It's like I've got that same thing. What do I do? You know?
yeah, I mean, I've done that most of my life, so I understand that.
Yeah, and we all have the little voice in our head saying you should do this, or if we have a underlying sentence like I'm not good enough or I'm not lovable, then it's like, oh, but I've got to. I've got to do something for somebody else, or I have to, whatever that is. So what a lovely technique to have that conversation because even though I haven't done it yet, I kind of see a couple of things opening up. Like not only, you know, so often the things that we tell ourselves or, the negative things are things you would never say to another person. Somebody'd smack you if you talk to them like we talk to ourselves. So I think to have a conversation with the inner child and actually love this inner being, will be a freeing technique, but it'll also feel like, hey, somebody's on your side. We're not in this alone.
Exactly.
I think it's great.
Yeah, because it makes you realize we are all in this together. But yet there's so much loneliness on the planet. And if
Hmm.
you don't have a significant other or you don't have family, whatever your circumstances are, you still have to be happy.
Right.
Right. And the greatest love there is the love you can give yourself because that's never going away. It's never going to end. You're not going to get divorced. You're not going to die. You're going to always be there for you when you get that connection going. And that's an absolute gift is when you can love yourself and put yourself first, Sandra. You were talking about giving away
Hmm.
your energy and your time and your care and your love. Well, when you're not giving it to you, what you're doing is you're changing the process that other person is supposed to be having. When we sublimate our feelings so that somebody else is going to be getting what they need, we're going against the process that's at hand. Our job is to always love and support and give ourselves what we need and not go against our feelings. Because if we go against our feelings, it's going to hurt us and it's not going to satisfy the other person. The outcome will not be what you think. But when you do take care of you, which is the only place where we have power is taking care of us, it will in fact be the right process for the other person.
Yeah, and really trusting it because earlier you had
Yeah,
said your near-death experience and going through the process, being in a restaurant and really picking up on everybody else's emotions and things. In that moment, it's like, how could that ever be a blessing? And after my dad died and I was experiencing terrible grief is when I decided to do the research on grief and put the things I believed as far as life after death together and create my book called We Don't Die. And out of that, it's just helped I don't know, tens of thousands of people so far. Even this radio show, people will never meet are getting impacted. And so for anyone listening, and even for you, because I know we all still struggle because we are human beings,
Right.
just the fact that we might not see it in this moment, but wherever we're at is the perfect place for us to be. And I think there really can be a gift out of it, right?
Absolutely. It doesn't matter where we are in our process. Just loving ourselves through the process is
Hmm.
everything. And it makes everything so much gentler and it makes things flow. I always say to my clients, look, we've got two choices here. We can be happy or we can be right.
Wow.
And I vote for
Say more
happy.
about that because I get it, but it's it's like a slap in the face. You can be happy or you can be right.
And most people choose right. And, that's the thing that always makes me giggle because we want to be happy at the core. That's the bottom line. It's not about how much money we make. We think the money's going to make us happy.
Hmm.
Everything we want, we think is going to make us happy. So let's choose happy first, and then all the rest can come or not come or whatever it does. But, in every interaction, we have a mindset because
Hmm.
of our insecurities, because of how we're wired, because of being human beings, that it's important to be right. That my point is, I must be right. You must understand why I did whatever I did because it was the right thing to do. Well, there is no right. When you've been on the other side, you realize there is no right or wrong. There's absolutely no right or wrong. It's like saying red is a better color than blue. They're just colors. One isn't better than the other, hot and cold. They're just temperatures. It's the same thing. There is no right or wrong on the other side.
Does it mean we're
So
not judged for our actions here? Is
no
that what you
judgment
mean?
whatsoever. None. None. There's a life review, and the only person who is judging you is you. There is no body of elders sitting there in judgment of you, determining where you will go. You determine all of that for yourself.
That's refreshing. So to look back and say, this is what I did great. This might have needed a little work or whatever.
But you get to experience it through the experience of the people who were involved. You get to feel what they felt and then decide, was that choice the choice you would make again or not make again?
Hmm.
Having that feedback.
Right.
Right.
Seems like a great education
It is.
and a great eye-opening experience. Our time is getting close to the end, but there's something else I wanted to touch on because you brought it
Sure.
up in the beginning. It's our perception because we all want to have a great life. And I know if I wake up in the morning and say this is going to be a really crummy day, like it's going to be a really crummy day, how can we change our perception in order to, I don't want to say make it a better day, but really get that we're the creators of our reality? You know what question I'm trying to ask?
I do.
How can you best answer that?
Well,
Oh wise woman, Diane.
old is right.
I said, oh, not old.
um, I think what I would say is always look for what's working. Always look for things that make you happy. Always put your focus on the things that uplift you. I wake up every morning and I say, I wonder what amazing people I'm going to get to interact with today because I know that everybody has a gift for me and I have a gift for everybody else. And I just look for that all day long. I stay in the moment. I interact in that present and I just look for the gifts. I'm always looking for what's right in my life, what's working in my life, what's precious in my life. And I had a wonderful teacher years ago who, when I would get stuck in the negative stuff, because I have one of those minds that ruminates, he said, if you make a big sound and a big movement at the same time, it will shift the energy. And it does. So I will jump up in the air, legs flying, arms flying, and make a huge noise. like a yelp, and it shifts my consciousness. It gets me out of that fear-based, oh, gloom and doom stuff.
I'm going to try that as soon as we're done.
Yeah, wait till we're off the air. And it makes you feel silly, and silly is such a great place to be.
Silly is a great place to be. My mind just wants to reach out to one of our listeners who put a review on iTunes that sometimes my voice gets too loud. And so to that listener, I don't know if you're male or female, but I just want to thank you. And I am working on getting a different system so that I don't yell too loud into the microphone. But thank you for that contribution. And when we are done with this, I am going to jump up and down and raise the vibration. So I was just trying not to laugh too loud. Just lastly, you had said a couple of words, and it reminded me. I had like a alarm that went off on my cell phone every day for about a year, and it had three words on it, and it was present, grateful, and gold. And
Nice.
and what it meant to me is to be in the present moment, um, put in gratitude at any time because it really can shift our day, our life, our happiness when we are really seeing what we're grateful for. Gratitude is a lot. And gold, just like you said, I've had times that I've sat next to people on airplanes and I'm thinking, oh, don't let this woman start talking to me. It's terrible. But I've got, the immediate thing that comes up is negative. But it's like, you know what? No, everybody has some gold for me for my life because they're with me. And if you play that game, you could be in the post office or the grocery store or just anywhere. And not only do they have some gold for you, you have some gold for them. I mean, just last week I was talking to a housekeeper at the condominium I was staying at, and it was the 1 year anniversary of her mom's death. And I had just picked up on she seemed a little sad, and she didn't know I wrote a book and I talk about grief and all these things. And just me sharing my experience with her, she came back the next day to clean, and she says, I got the first good night's sleep I had in a year, just
Oh,
knowing that I wasn't alone. And she believes my whole vacation was planned so that I'd meet her and be able to have a conversation with her. And so, I mean, you just never know. And any one of us can be this for any other human being, because we're all in on this game of life together.
exactly.
So, Dianne Sherman, any closing words?
I think the thing I would say is for me, life is a party. I have this party going on inside of me all the time. And I know that Spirit's going to bring all kinds of wonderful people in my path.
Yep.
And I just love, interacting. And there was a time in my life when I was afraid. And I realized after my near death that there's nothing to be afraid of on the other side. And there's certainly nothing to be afraid of on this side. We
That,
have much more control than we think we have.
wow, I love that. Well, with that, I'm going to close this episode, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today. Your website is it guidingyourspirit.com?
Yes, it is.
Okay, just as it's spelled, guidingyourspirit.com. And to our listener, if you go to we-don't-die-radio.com, I will have a link so you can read more about Dianne, and you can click and go right to her website. And I do have a favor to ask. If you enjoy these episodes, if however you're listening to them, many people on iTunes, but just either write to me at we-don't-die-radio.com, or if you feel like you can go to iTunes and leave a review. I would appreciate that. Like any good restaurant, the more people that say it's good, the more people will go to it. And I'm thankful we've now hit over 36,000 listens here on We Don't Die Radio. And I thank you, my loyal listener or new listener, for being here today. So my name is Sandra Champlain. I believe that life is an education for the soul and that your life here on earth is important. And in the words of Dianne, just life